All right. This is the SIG network for December 8th, 2022. Looks like we're going to start it off with triage as usual.
All right, I've got it queued up. By the way, anybody who wants to run triage is more than welcome to. I just happen to have it queued up because I look at it, the day in the morning before. Window. Everybody can see this, yes?
Looks good.
All right. So thanks to all the folks again who went through issues yesterday and earlier this week. We don't have too many, but not zero. So Dan, you filed this a meager 34 minutes ago. Do you want to talk to it?
Just came out of a question from OVN Kubernetes people. They were saying like, so is a deny all policy expected to deny cluster ingress traffic, since we don't specify a lot about cluster ingress traffic? And I felt like, yes, even though we don't specify what you can allow in terms of cluster ingress, we do specify what you can deny, and that's all of it. So I just figured we should have an EDE test for that case.
Okay. We should just accept triage on this.
Yeah, and can you assign it to me, and either I'll do it or I'll get someone from the network policy API subgroup to do it, or ask if anyone wants to. And if someone else is here from that subgroup, please speak up and take it if you want.
You got it.
Thank you.
All right. SIG network test flakes if min sync period is too large. Antonio, is Antonio here? There you are. Do you want to talk to this one? Are you there? Okay. No, Antonio. I didn't read this whole issue because I thought we would talk about it today.
There is
Antonio was here. He may come back.
Yeah. So basically, there was a test. Some of the EDE test runs run with min sync period equals 10 seconds, meaning once you create a service, it may take up to 10 seconds for the IP tables rules to be there. And some of the tests were assuming that changes that they made would be applied in less than 10 seconds.
Okay.
So there was some debate over like the correct timeout to be using and exactly. And then Antonio changed his mind about something at the end. And but I think he's, well, okay, I was going to say I think he's dealing with this, but I guess he hasn't touched it in 6 days.
Okay. But it does sound like a real issue, so I'm going to go ahead and accept triage.
And Antonio returns.
Are you there, Antonio? All right, moving on. Reserve a static port range for node ports. So this is a feature request that is basically do what we did for service IPs for node ports. Carve off the bottom section for static use and only auto allocate from it when needed. We predicted that would be needed. I accepted it, but before I closed it, I wanted to throw it up here, see if anybody objects to this on some principle. Silence is consent, at least for this forum. Moving on, load balancer should be able to reserve UDP traffic. Incorrectly assumes IPv4. I didn't look at this one. Is it that we have some v4 address station? Oh, Antonio is here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, so this was a problem with some new test that got added and didn't have the slow tag. The cost people was filtering by slow, so they got this test, and I fixed it in COPS, and one person is going to fix it in once we open master again. So
okay, so I'll just mark it accepted. There's a couple of Win kernel ones here.
Oh, this person is sending a lot of PRs for Qproxy Windows with a lot of backports. I don't know if some of you is reviewing that. I didn't have time.
I have not looked at these at all. Anybody on the Windows Qproxy side here?
There are a lot of PRs for Windows proxy.
Do we have somebody who's able and willing to review those?
Review the PRs that are open.
Review the PRs and possibly evaluate these issues to figure out if they're real issues or not.
I believe we've already actually verified that they're real issues, and we have the PRs queued up to be merged in after the code freeze is lifted.
Okay. Sorry, I flipped my windows.
Mike Zappa.
Hey, can I assign these issues to you and you can triage accept them if you think they're real?
Mm-hmm. If here I'll shoot it's Mike Zappa 87. If I'm even available in there. Not in there.
Not an org member yet?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I can't assign it. I can't assign it to you then. But can you jump on these? And well, actually, I'll just mark it triage accepted. But are you anywhere on here?
If you want to assign them to me, Tim, I can
All right.
sync with
Thank you,
Mike.
Bridget.
Yeah.
Perfect. And you can just triage accept them. There's 1, 2.
I'll sync with Mike offline.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And I just pasted a docs PR into chat that needs review from someone who knows Windows Qproxy.
Excellent. All right. We're now into issues from October, which is good. So if we need to stop, Casey, keep us honest. UDP traffic loss observed during start of service pod when external traffic policy is local. There was some chatter on this. I didn't absorb all of it. And oh, Lars updated it this morning. Lars, are you here? That's just a please update. Can you give a quick summary of this?
Yeah, I missed the part when he said that he has the same ephemeral port all the time. But there is obviously an improvement in contract cleanup. So I would like him to retest with the latest Kubernetes, basically.
Got it. Okay.
It was fun to do the graphs.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave this then for revisiting next time. Is this the same one? Did I just hit the same one twice? Looks like it. Oh, no. Same graph, different issue. Okay.
Yeah, now it's TCP. And
okay.
Here I believe I have tested the right thing.
Okay. I pinged this one for updates. We'll see what happens. Leave it till next time. Flaky test in PPC 64. Wow.
Yeah, but this is a long-standing issue.
I didn't digest it. What is the test? Or what is the issue?
They have several tests that are flaking in their environment, but there is no access to the environment, and I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to follow with them, but
do we know who them is? Is anybody from them here?
I think that they are from OpenShift. No, that I remember too.
Does OpenShift support? Sorry, I don't mean this in a negative way. Is anybody using PowerPC 64 Kubernetes? I have
We
not
certainly build
IBM.
it. Yeah, IBM supports it. So I know that we do build OpenShift on those architectures somewhere.
Okay. All right. I know it's part of the standard, like
on a power machine, actually.
Okay. All right. Cool. I did not know that.
The thing is, they have.
Go ahead, Antonio.
No. Well,
no, I was going to say that we are planning to deprecate these things on Ingress Nginx at least, because building them doesn't pay for like people using that. So I would say that maybe in our case, I would like that IBM builds that, because usually in our case, at least in Ingress, we spend a lot of time and a lot of CPU building those things, and almost no one uses that. So I'm not sure if this is the same case for us.
Okay.
In this case, they are running the CI. The problem is that some tests are flaking and they don't have logs and they don't fail in any other place. So what you can do? I mean,
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave this open for now. We can revisit it in 2 weeks and see if it, or whenever we have our next meeting, and see if there's any updates on it. This is the last one, so let's squeeze it in before Casey kicks us off. Oh, is this is an old one? This is the one where I pinged Dan a month ago.
Yep, I started working on a mini cap to address this.
Excellent. All right,
Perfect timing.
triage done right at the 15. Oh, we just meant 16.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll give it to you.
Back to you, Casey.
And I'll ping it right over to Antonio for conformance tests and external IPs.
oh, I almost forget. I think that it seems that in the old days of Kubernetes, that only a few persons remember, they were using external IPs at the default, and most of the people now prefer to use internal because external have costs and they are not really needed. So I think that was, I don't remember nowadays, but I think that what we are going to suggest is to prefer internal IP first always for testing. So it was more sort of an announcement than, and if somebody has any problem with doing that.
Sounds like not.
Okay, cool. So internal IP is
Next on the agenda, I'm not familiar with this handle, MSAU.
Michelle.
Oh, that's me.
Michelle? Oh, hi.
Yeah, so I'm one of the tech leads in SIG storage. I just wanted to stop by and say hello. I'm doing sort of a world tour of the SIGs. But basically, there is this end user Kubernetes community called Data on Kubernetes. And there's a lot of members there who are basically database vendors, and they go and trade practices, best practices on how to run stateful workloads on Kubernetes. They also, and operators and things like that. So they've written a lot of operators and best practices on operators. I am planning on sort of starting a regular sort of roundtable session between that end user community and Kubernetes maintainers. And hopefully we can use this to sort of facilitate feedback directly from the end users on sort of what kinds of things they'd like to see in Kubernetes to help them run stateful workloads more smoothly. So if anyone here is interested in sort of joining that forum, I started a doc to collect a bunch of names, and we're gonna try to schedule the first meeting in around January, sometime in January.
I'm
Great.
interested.
Yeah, I think it's a really
is-
interesting topic for us because we've had some issues even recently about the intersection of stateful databases and load balancers and ingress. So I do think that's a sort of interesting topic if folks want to jump in.
Yeah, I'm interested too. I'm working on this daily. So cool.
Awesome. Yep, please add your name, and that way when the roundtable actually gets scheduled in January, I can basically reach out to everyone on the doc. And I think we'll probably have maybe after a couple of the first roundtables, if we decide, or if we see in those roundtables that there's enough content there of like problems worth solving, then I think we can also consider starting potentially a stateful work group to help tackle some of these. All right.
Thanks for stopping by, Michelle.
Thank you very much.
Next up was Shane.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up just kind of talk about an issue we talked about in the mailing list a couple weeks ago, and there's an open issue for donating a repository. For those of you who, I'm going to do a quick recap of what it is for those of you who may have not seen it, but Bleakst is what it's called. It originally started as an experimental layer 4 load balancer using eBPF for the data plane. At Kong, where I work, we now have several people from the Gateway API community, including us maintainers, and also Andrew Stoikas, all kind of contributing to it and building it up for the purpose of it being the conformance testing implementation that we use for Gateway API, since it has historically not had that for like PRs and stuff like that. So last we left off, we had, I think, 3 issues, which I think we've got, like 3 concerns about taking it on, which I think we've covered. The first concern was support surface. We absolutely don't want it to be a any kind of production support service for this. And I think we've covered that with the combination of the writing on the wall, plus the fact that we in the thread, we talked about being committed to having some kind of technical mechanism to actually stop people from using it in production, as opposed to saying don't use it in production and then later they do it, literally stop them. Today, that is, it only works with KindNet, and in the future, we're open to things like having a shutdown timer. So I think that one's resolved. And then the naming, I think nobody's worried about that, but if they are, we can adjust the name. And then the fact that it includes Rust was the third one. And we didn't get a whole lot of feedback on that one, but I think that Nick Young made a comment to the effect of it's really low key, and if we're going to start somewhere, potentially we should just not worry too much. But that's kind of what I wanted to bring up for discussion, was were there any lingering concerns about, I guess, are any of those concerns still lingering, or are there any other concerns before we would accept it?
Yeah, I'll just add I think I've commented on the issue and the thread as well, and I'm supportive of this. We've been really trying to push L4 through for Gateway API, and a project like this is going to be very helpful to at least run some proof of concepts, ensure the APIs we're building actually make sense and are usable. We don't have the same set of, with L7 APIs, we had a pretty large set of implementations that were actively helping us evaluate this. With L4, having some kind of test POC project seems useful. So I'm supportive as well.
Cool. And it sounds like we're probably good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Shane. The next topic was actually me. I wanted to bring this up. I am planning on stepping down from the chair position for SIG Network. Been in this spot for a long time and want to give an opportunity to someone else to take over this role. So I wanted to bring that up here and see if anyone was interested in that, or if anyone has any other thoughts on that sort of succession. I think this is the first time, to my knowledge, that we've done a succession in SIG Network, so it's sort of new ground for us.
Is this the time we start asking you, telling you thank you for your service and give you medals and stuff?
Please don't.
I think this is important, and honestly, we're probably remiss for not having done it sooner. Most of the other SIGs have either done this once or twice, or even institutionalized this as a regular thing. it's an opportunity for other people to get involved. It's not like you don't have to be assigning yourself all the issues. It's not, hopefully it's not drinking from the fire hose. It's helping make sure things run and keeping the meetings in order and organizing and finding the right people and making contact. So I think it's a great opportunity for somebody who wants to get more involved, but maybe doesn't want to be owning all the design and code problems. You can do both if you want, but it's an opportunity. I know Dan Williams Dan, are you here still?
Dan is not here today.
Okay. Dan made similar noises, so I don't want to speak for him yet, but here's an opportunity for new people to step up in an interesting way and take some more community leadership. So you don't need to sign up right now, right? But if you're interested in this, let me or Casey or Dan Williams know that you're interested, and we can talk about it.
And I'll say, I'm not falling off the face of the earth, so I'll be around to answer questions and help if anybody decides to pick this up. And plus, Tim is super helpful, and everybody here is very helpful in supporting you in that role. So it's not something to be super stressed about if you are interested.
Hopefully it's not too high bandwidth either. Like you shouldn't need to be spending 10 hours a week on this sort of work.
Yeah, I would suggest it would be a great idea to help people understand if they are interested or they're trying to make a case to their employer as to why they should spend the time. They probably would want to go into that discussion with an idea of both the time commitment and am I signing on for 1 year, 3 years, forever? Like defining that might be, SIG specific, but also useful for people trying to make decisions.
Yeah, for sure. And there are some like project-wide guidelines or recommendations around that I can dig up and share. May also make sense for us to think about codifying a little bit more of a formal process and timeline, like Tim was saying, within SIG network itself.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we should probably formalize this and say, like, if you're signing up, every year or 18 months or something, we will offer this to new people if they want to take it. Right. So nobody feels like they're stuck because there's no succession plan and that they can't get out of it. Like nobody should feel that way. This should not be an obligation.
I think that should also extend to like sub projects within this SIG because, same problem exists. So it would be nice to have it codified. And
are you trying to get out of your responsibilities?
I was going to say, no, we will not release you from your network policy duty.
I'm not trying to get out of it. I'm just saying that there is no way out of it at the moment.
Releasing you is mercy, and we're not known for mercy here.
I got tricked into it in the first place.
It is your Jay, Andrew. We voted you. Sorry, Jay.
You and Jay, yeah, you didn't vote me. You just said, "Can you do the meeting today?" And here we are, 2 years later.
Casey, I think it will help a lot of people if you do an FAQ somewhere of the things you do today and the time load on you. And so people who want to volunteer can say, okay, it will look, you're obviously not committing, it will be the same, but it will look almost like what you have in your FAQ. There are key questions that everybody else like, how long does it take? What do I do? What should I do? And you don't need to answer all the questions. You can point to I'm assuming we have a lot of literature in the community guidelines.
There is, yeah.
Of this, yeah. So you can point to it.
I'll come up with a collection of all the relevant docs and roles and responsibilities and share that on the mailing list.
And to Andrew, to your point, thank you for reminding me. I'd started a conversation a number of weeks, even months back, about formalizing the recognition of more roles within the SIG and building towards more formal succession plans. And then I totally let it fall off my radar. So I will try to find that discussion and bring it back.
If you need help, yeah, just ping. I'm happy to like help out with that stuff because I think it applies to like all these sub projects, right? Not just network policy. So
Yeah, we've been working on something similar with Gateway API. We're trying to build a clearer contributor ladder and process because yeah, we also face the same problems.
Cool. That's all I had. So if there's not any more discussion on that. It looks like Andrew is up next.
this is just really quick. Yeah. So I was I had seen this a long time ago and then I forgot about it. I was Googling network policy the other day and this came up. And I kind of brought it up. So this website, sorry, let me rewind, was sponsored, like started by Cilium. It includes some really nice resources, video on the birth of network policy with our own Tim and Dan and other folks. And this came up in the network policy API subgroup meeting on Monday. And the general vibe with it was like, it's kind of confusing, right? So this website is literally network policy IO. It's preaching like a fully upstream network policy object, but there's a network policy editor on the front page that is not fully open source that I could find. I could be wrong if there's other Cilium folks on the page. So we were kind of discussing like what we could do with this to kind of bring it into the fold, like rewinding even more, like the network policy API subgroup, like kind of want all these random network policy resources to kind of live in one place so we can, make it easier for users who want to figure out network policy and may have trouble understanding just the default upstream documentation. So I was planning on reaching out to Cilium folks and seeing like what they're thinking of doing with this repo and if there's any way we could like assimilate it back into SIGs or parts of it. I don't know if anyone had any opinions to that or thoughts on this website in general.
If we were to repatriate this, like, would we want to take over the site? I first of all, it's owned by Cilium, right? So I'm not signing Cilium up to give it to us, but suppose hypothetically that they were like, yeah, sure, go right ahead, take it over. Is that what we want to do?
I don't think so. We have a website already. So it would be more like kind of taking the resources that are here and putting them in our website and deprecating this website or making it less of like a generic, this is network policy, because it looks like an official upstream Kubernetes network policy kind of site. Like, and we had someone come and ask if it was, and I was like, no, we don't own this. And then he was like, I was confused because I thought this was generic upstream network policy, but then I realized the network policy editor was actually part of Cilium. And it was just like creating some confusion. So I think the goal would be maybe they make this and to ask them to possibly make this into more of like, this is Cilium network policy editor. Like, this is great. And we put the generic like network policy related resources in an upstream repo. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We should go ask the question. Ultimately, we don't have a trademark on network policy. And so we can't prevent anybody from doing this. If the Cilium folks want to maintain this because it's valuable for them and their customers, that's great. We could ask them to make it clearer that it's not officially affiliated or something if we think that that's what we want to do, but we can have the discussion. I don't think anyone from Cilium is here on a regular basis.
My next
Anybody from Cilium here?
plan was to reach out to Liz and Thomas Graff from Cilium and just see. But I didn't know if there was more backstory that I was missing, so I wanted to bring it up here.
I don't have any backstory to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so thanks.
Cool. That's the end of the agenda. Next meeting would be December 22nd, and I think we said we're going to keep that one on. Although I suspect it'll be a little bit light. I know that I won't be here that week.
I'll be around.
Yep, Tim, you said that. So Tim will be running that one. Come hang out with Tim for Christmas.
If I can, I want to throw out a quick word. As the release is about to be cut imminently, any minute, any day now. Actually, I have no idea when the official date is, but I think it's like this week. The cycle starts to go back to the KEP phase of the cycle, although officially we don't really have a cycle, but this is how it works in practice. I sent out a note to Signet about how I'm going to try to manage my own time around reviewing stuff, because I feel like I've been giving people an unsatisfactory experience lately, cramming everything in right at the last second. So I'm going to try to do better at spreading that out over time, but that means that I'm asking everybody else who's sending KEPs to help spread that out over time too, right? If you save your mega KEPs for the last 2 weeks, we're both going to have a bad time. As we enter the KEP cycle, I'm going to go back through all the KEPs that I'm currently paying attention to and sort of flag those. If there are new things that people are doing that you feel like would benefit from my review, please let me know earlier rather than later, so we can discuss it. And if there are big ones, I'm happy to make time to sit on a Zoom call on a regular basis and talk about incremental progress as opposed to dropping giant PR bombs at the end. I'm setting this up for myself personally. If other people want to follow suit, that's totally fine. I'm not imposing it on anybody. This is how I'm trying to manage my time.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. I love the incremental. I love the small PRs. I would imagine, and maybe this is something, and I did read your mail, but I don't remember if this was in there, but I would imagine that test coverage starts to be really important if there's n tiny changes coming in, all of which could add up to some sort of terrible excitement. Like, just because they were all individually okay doesn't mean that the whole is great. So I'm wondering if you have kind of an approach of like, we also want the test to do X or something.
Yeah. I think as a community, we need to figure out more systemic answers to this. Like in the past, we've said like, we don't merge half done things, right? Because it's bad. We don't have the right machinery in place to like have the API checked in, but not have it appear in discovery docs. And so we just choose not to merge the APIs until the implementations are in place. And that like is automatically a mega PR. But like, I'm happy to just sit and talk through, even just talking through like, what are you doing? What's changed in the last couple of weeks as you're evolving this thing? I can review commits on your own branch or on a shared branch that we use to figure out how to do incremental reviews. I'm making it up as I go here. Like what I know is what we've been doing isn't working. And so I'm going to just try anything different. In fact, I might try 3 or 4 different things with different people and see what does and doesn't work better. I know, the community, the project overall tried to set up these dev branch experiment with API machinery stuff, and it had some pros and some cons. I wanted to go for something low touch, like put it in your own branch somewhere and just, rather than force pushing your branch, send commits or send PRs against your own branch and like tag me in so I can look at them, right? And then when it comes to that final merge, it might still be a mega PR, but it won't be something that I've never seen before, right?
And then spillover. Part of the tooling is the spilling over. Like one of the things I noticed in the language is, which I appreciate, is you feel responsible for the entire thing. Right, which you may be, but you're not alone, right?
Yeah,
so,
look, I'm not been shy about leaning on you and others when I need help reviewing. So
others as well, like
yeah. My main point being, I don't want to impose on you, right? I don't want to say like I'm signing Cal up to do incremental reviews every week. I will sign myself up. If you want to participate, that's more than welcome.
For the sake of this discussion, I am. All right. I guess it's part of showing up, right? So I am, and I'm quite sure a lot of people will be as well. So it's just a spillover, so we don't have to funnel everything through one person. or a few person. Like the more the merrier, as long as we know, like we maintain a certain level of quality and consistency, we should be fine. All right.
Okay, talking about quality and sustainability, there are more topics. No, I want to talk about it.
Now we have
So
more topics.
then can I add my topic?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, well, I sent an email because I mean I really struggling. So lately, you can see that there are new implementations of proxy like things, and I have this in OpenShift, and I see this in Sirion, and you see that with topology, people comes to ask for more features, but they are proxy only features. And I really think that's a bad experience having an API that works only in one places and doesn't work in others. And I thought that, well, maybe the solution is to add conformance. And I check it with KPMG too, and they have some failing things that are not working. So my point here is I don't think that conformance only is going to fix things, because some people just skip it. I see that so some implementation skip the test, so they don't implement that, they skip the test. So my question is, moving forward as a SIG, how do we want to do this? I mean, to not grow organically on proxy, or in some custom SIG network thing that then evolves and nobody have implemented, or is only half implemented. Yes, I don't know who has the hands up, but
Kyle does.
This is a very deep, like thought, like it always goes on my nerve, this topic, right? And I think I've talked to Stem so many times about this, and I've ranted about it so many times. What we have is a system that has n by n number of capabilities in it, that the end user has no way to tell that the thing I'm about to push to the API server will actually succeed by the thing that implements it. And I use this example about policies, right? Take a network policy. Network API gateway has many sharp edges where, oh, I deployed something from somebody, but the thing doesn't support gRPC, right? Or whatever. So the API server has no way to say, your request will likely work, right? Beyond API static validation and the stuff we do in conversion and all of that stuff, which is fair. But what this thing, the entire, and this goes, by the way, to disks, it goes to GPUs, it goes to like, oh, I want a GPU that can split, or whatever GPU do these days. Right? There is no way you can tell that the driver that supports the GPU actually can do the feature you want. What I'm trying to say is we're lacking kind of capability in enumeration. Like we cannot show up to a system and to a Kubernetes and say, hey, can you do policy of type whatever? Or hey, can you do disk of type whatever? And this is because we don't have that. API server accepts many requests on a lot of setups that it shouldn't have, because the request is fair, it's valid, like statically it's valid. But there's nothing in the deployment, nothing came up to Kubernetes API server and said, I can support this capability, please accept it. Right? So that's beyond conformance, because conformance is a commitment of, oh, hey, I'm a gateway API and I can do these things I claim to do. Fine. Right? But the deployment, the snowflakes deployment that users have by adding more add-ons to their system are not what people run their conformance against, not what we conform against. Right? So that has been an ongoing line of thought that I've been involved in. Anyway, I yield the floor.
I was just going to say, you mentioned KPMG. They know, like the fact that they skip some of the conformance tests is because the code is not done yet. Like they explicitly have in their plan, we will eventually pass all of the conformance tests. So.
Yeah, but my point is, I don't want it to. My point is, what I see is conformance is not enough, or is too late. You know, I don't have the feeling that conformance is the solution, or maybe I'm wrong, because I don't know, for example, with this topology thing, I really scared about this new request about the topology and make it hard code. And right now, how do you manage? So right now we are leaning on kubeproxy to test all these things, right? How do you offer a good user experience from the SIG when you develop a new feature like this? That's my question. Is I don't know how, and I was checking conformance, but I mean that's practically impossible to test this topology with conformance. Right?
So, you know, the KPNG library thing is supposed to help with this by giving a core where we can implement features like topology that other proxy implementations could then just use that library and get the new topology feature automatically. There's a cap about doing that. There's something else.
What is the cap? This new one that you are updating lately.
This one.
The problem with that is, you know, it substitutes an implementation for a specification, right? It says the norm is whatever this tool does, right? And that's a point in time statement. So while I agree that KPNG is a way to get everybody aligned, not everybody, to get a lot of people aligned more easily, I don't know that it substitutes for a specification or a set of tests.
Is the answer like maintaining, I don't know, some infrastructure that runs conformance, that where we run conformance on certain implementations so that we can say this implementation is conforming to our spec? Like right now, we're just trusting that downstream implementations run our tests, but they can skip them. Like Antonio said, they can do whatever. Like, is it for us to maintain as a community to maintain a list of conformant implementations and keep that up to date?
No, I mean that's impossible. You cannot maintain. I can tell you because I'm checking all the logs. I mean, you have, it's impossible. Sorry, Shane.
We should also be careful that, you know, the way kubeproxy implements things isn't necessarily what the specification is, right? Like kubeproxy may say we publish all endpoints, right? Or I'll pick on topology since Rob is on my screen. You know, the way that topology is implemented between kubeproxy and the API server is not the only way that it could be implemented. And would a different implementation be valid or invalid if it's different from what we do, right? Like suppose you had a network layer that had really good information about bytes per second on each flow. Could you use that to feed into a topology aware service proxy that made smarter decisions? That seems like it should be valid, right?
Yeah, I would say that topology is a good example, but likely not the only one of features we have made with the limitations of our current implementation of kubeproxy in mind that may not apply to all other proxy implementations in the Kubernetes ecosystem. So maybe we're not making the best spec decisions. I mean, we don't, yeah, agreeing with everything that's been said, but Shane, you've got a hand.
Oh, I feel like I'm really going to regret what I'm about to say. If you're willing to take the stretch with me that Kubernetes is like an operating system for clusters. And we're talking about having applications deployed on the operating system that aren't fully compatible with the operating system. Most operating systems solve this by having like an in-tree package manager. Just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there.
I don't think that we are on that problem, you know. So what I'm saying is, what I think that Tim said this through 2 or 3 years ago, is that we should freeze kubeproxy and stop adding features based on kubeproxy and start thinking more holistically based on specs and kind of things.
That seems like two slightly different things. Like if we're thinking about a spec and all features get added to the spec first, surely they need to eventually come back to kube proxy, right? Are you just talking about a different first initial step, or are you just saying that there's no new proxying features ever in Kubernetes?
No. What I'm saying is that maybe to graduate, we should, I don't know, require certain quorum in the ecosystem. There are not many people.
We've definitely done that with some of the network policy caps, saying that, like, you know, to get to beta, this needs to be implemented in at least 3 different network plugins or something like that. I guess we haven't done that as much with kube proxy caps, and maybe we should.
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know the solution. I just now brainstorming with all of you.
I mean,
Antonio, I thought go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Antonio, it sounded to me like maybe I misunderstood what you were saying. It sounded to me like you started off with being worried about people coming in and building kube proxy like things, but not meeting conformance. Plus, your added thing that you don't know that conformance testing really is the thing that solves that. But then you're talking about like wanting to freeze kube proxy, which these seem kind of like different issues to me. Or did I miss something?
The thing is, let me. So the thing that I see is that services is growing and we keep adding features. Okay, and right now we have a big portfolio of features in kubeproxy, and people keep demanding more features and more advanced features. And what I don't see that's sustainable, because just the other implementation, there are not many services implementation cannot keep up with kubeproxy right now. And if we keep developing this way, we are going to keep making the gap bigger. And what I feel is that services is overwhelming and cannot keep us more than it is doing. And we still keep working on adding more things on services. So I think that we are in a vicious cycle with kubeproxy, and this is also affecting how people use services, and I don't know. I mean,
So we should be clear that there's at least two different categories of stuff. There's API impacting stuff, which, you know, like adding some new thing to the API. We try really hard not to add a lot to the service API, but, you know, adding service types, right, like is a big deal, right? Because we know that every implementation has to understand that. And then there's non-API impacting things like topology, which strictly speaking should be invisible to most users, except that it makes their system, you know, less expensive, for example. And when we have to figure out, I guess, if these non-API impacting things are requirements. Like, is there a topology conformance requirement, right? Or is that simply a, hey, use whatever information you've got to make smart decisions sort of situation? And then for API impacting stuff, I think we have done and need to continue doing the, I know it's not going to sound great, but the IETF sort of multiple interoperable implementations must exist, right? And we can't finish it until we know that there are interoperable implementations. And I chose interoperable instead of conformant because I'm not sure we want to put a stamp on it that says you are conformant and you are not. But to say, like, we changed TCP, we need to know that at least some preponderance of systems out there work. So, like, maybe we need a specification for the API service that is divorced from what kubeproxy does. It should already be, but it's probably not.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we are catching up to the fact that kubeproxy, well, that kubeproxy has become a situation that is very similar to network policy, to ingress, to gateway API, all these other networking APIs that have multiple implementations. When we started with kubeproxy, I was not around, but when kubeproxy started, when all of this initially was created, I don't think that was anywhere in anyone's mind. And now we're just kind of catching up to the new reality that, hey, this is implemented everywhere. We should try and use roughly the same practices we're using for our other networking APIs. I don't exactly know what pieces of that we follow, but we definitely have plenty of prior art with these other APIs.
You know, strictly speaking, we said from the beginning, services are an optional API in Kubernetes. You don't have to run kubeproxy. You don't have to offer DNS. Those were optional. In fact, DNS was in the add-ons directory for a long time, right? It was because it was this thing that you could put on top of your Kubernetes cluster to make it more useful. It has become a de facto norm that you have services and that you have DNS. But we are now seeing kubeproxy be replaced in the same way that network policy and others are replaced. I don't know anybody who actually runs a cluster without any form of services, but they probably could. Actually, I have no idea anymore. Between the linkage between the client Go probably breaks that. But I guess I'm agreeing with you, Rob. Maybe we need to treat kubeproxy and service more like we treat network policy.
And the other thing is to maintain all the proxies.
We should probably have a document talking about best practices for SIG network KEPs.
I actually started a doc, not exactly that topic, but sort of similar, thinking about the principles for when we say, yes, we're willing to consider a KEP, and when we're willing to say no, and we're not going to consider that. So I didn't write very much. I wrote just a couple of paragraphs as a seed, and then I haven't circled back to it.
But in which sense then? In which sense did you say that? To have this doc.
Sorry, what?
Just in which sense did you say that we should have? I didn't understand the goal.
I was saying that, like, so, you know, it sounds like we're agreeing that we should require proxying related KEPs to have about supporting multiple or being implemented in multiple implementations. And
yeah. Sorry. You're right.
So I have to drop off. I need a couple minutes to prep for my next meeting. So I'm going to drop off, but you guys can keep going if you want to. This is great. I'll be around in 2 weeks. Hopefully I'll see some of you. If not, everybody have an amazing holidays, take some time off, and we'll see you in January.
Bye, Tim.
Good one.
Looks like everybody's dropping, so I think we'll
Yeah, everybody's
call it
dropping.
here.
What? 2 minutes.
There's 2 minutes left anyway.
Yeah.
Happy holidays,
Well,
folks.
thank you
happy
for
holidays,
everything,
everybody.
Casey.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Take care.